What's up? Welcome in. We are almost to the draft. One last pre-draft show. And once again, Jahns, who just goes on vacation right before the draft, veteran move by him. He doesn't have to deal with all the last minute speculation. So instead, Kevin Fishbain does. He has to do extra mock drafts because of it, and he gets yelled at more. Did I sum that up properly?
You did. This is not close to Johns' family reunion in Ireland during training camp vacation.
Oh, yeah.
That still is like the all-timer. But yeah, he really went right up against the draft here. So I assume he'll be at Hallis tomorrow night. We're recording this Wednesday.
Who knows?
We'll see. You know, he keeps reminding everybody that he's on the beach. He might want another day on the beach.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. I don't blame him for that. But we still have big last-minute draft questions and topics to discuss here. Sort of a loaded final preview show. We'll call it that. We're going to talk about sort of our last-minute, I don't know, gut feelings, dominoes to fall, and we might even make an actual prediction here. Might hold Kevin to the fire on who he actually thinks the Bears are going to pick, and I'll give mine too. Let's start with this, and again, welcome in at Adam Hoge, at K Fishbain is where you can follow us, and the show is at Hoge and Jahns on Twitter, on Instagram. A lot of bonus content up there. You can go to hogeandjahns.com to buy all the merch. Appreciate all the love and support, and we will have you covered throughout the weekend here, as will Kevin and Johnsy on The Athletic. theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns is where you should go. If for some reason you're not already subscribed, you can get The Beast from Dane Brugler, which is available to download and the whole interactive version of it is available on The Athletic now. So make sure you are subscribed. I want to start with this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you listen to this right away, The Athletic is at Superdog in the city Wednesday from 3 to 9 p.m. with offering some athletic swag. Yeah. And if you don't listen to this right away, just go check out John Greenberg's pictures from going to Superdog on Tuesday so you could feel like you were there.
Also, shout out to some of the listeners who tweeted at us yesterday some of the swag they picked up. And copies of The Beast, too, are there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And plus, you're going to Superdog, which is great. So, again, 3 to 9. If you're listening to this right away, sort of as it drops, you can check that out. I should one more thing to plug, because you, on your show, your podcast, Breaking In, had Peter King on. And all I want to know is, did he tell you who the Bears are drafting?
He did not. I think he's reveling in the fact who anybody's drafted anymore in retirement. But that Breaking In with Kevin Fishbain, go check it out on all your podcast platforms. We're on Instagram and YouTube. And Peter King tells an incredible draft day story from covering the Bengals the year they drafted Boomer Esiason. And,
wow.
And it comes to the end, so you got to stick around. But it's so that was a very fun conversation to kind of see how he got really probably the greatest NFL writer, certainly of this century, how he got his start. It was very cool moment to get to sit down with him.
Yeah, your podcast is off to a good start. Joe Davis, Nicole Auerbach, and Peter King. Some heavy hitters to start the first 3 episodes.
I was gonna say, if I keep on this rate, when it's time for the Hoge and Jahns episode, am I going to disappoint listeners? Be like,
oh, probably. And at this rate, it'll be 2026 before we're actually on the show.
Well, I could slide somebody in before Hoge and Jahns that kind of brings down. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to throw somebody out there, get them angry.
Yeah, we need like an opener. We need like an opening act. It's just kind of lowered expectations a little bit.
Yeah, maybe Larry Mayer.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Larry is a perfect opening act because he gets the crowd going with his Larry jokes, and
that's generous. But
hopefully they stick around.
That would be the problem. You don't want them to leave early. All right, let's jump into some of this last minute conversation. We're gonna we'll start with this question. Biggest domino to fall in the top 9. So, in other words, like, who's the player right now that it's a little unpredictable on what's going to happen, that could sort of shake things up and really make the Bears pivot quickly, or all of a sudden be like, oh wow, didn't think that was going to happen. So who's your biggest domino to fall in the top 9?
Yeah, I'm still fascinated on where Ashton Genty's going to go. This happens every year, Hogue, where we do these mocks for months. Then 24, 48 hours before the draft, nobody was mocking Ashton Genty the Jaguars, and now everybody's mocking him the Jaguars at 5. So usually when you're this late in the game, that means that's probably going to happen. But I still think that is fascinating if it does, and the ripple effects from it. So I think Genty and Tyler Warren, to me, are like, I think you can put them at a lot of different spots between 5 and 9. A lot. There's only 5 spots there, but like, you can make arguments for them in that range, and you can also make arguments for either of them being there at 10. And I know who you're going to say who's also in this category, but I think that's why Brian Poles said yesterday, this is going to be wild. Kind of how this all comes together for the Bears.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you on that one. It certainly feels like Genty's going to go before the Bears pick. The name that has been, I always hate to say, like, dropping, like someone's stock is like literally dropping right before the draft. It's not so much that as much as it is like people were just wrong in where they were predicting this player to go early. But whatever, it's part of the fun draft conversation. But all of a sudden, there's been a lot of smoke in the last week, really in the last few days, that Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, is going to fall farther than people thought. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of different versions of mock drafts out there. Most of them, and I've always been very clear in my mock drafts, like, other than maybe a little bit at the end, really not trying to make predictions as much as I'm just trying to say, hey, this is probably what I would do here. This was a player that makes sense for the Bears. He fits, this type of player they like, whatever. Some mock drafts do come out right before the draft where there's legitimate intel behind them. And I do think Peter Schrager's mock, which came out this morning, as we're recording on Wednesday, is one you should think about. He nailed a couple surprising picks last year that happened. And so just keep in mind. Now, one of the things he had to happen that surprised me, Kevin, was he had Mason Graham fall not only out of the top 9, meaning he available there for the Bears to pick at number 10. He then had the Bears trade back. So not take Mason Graham and instead trade back with the Indianapolis Colts, the Bears dropping back to 14, and then watching Mason Graham go number 13 to the Miami Dolphins. Now, I don't want to bring up a year in which the Bears pick 14th and watch a defensive tackle go one pick ahead of them at number 13. His name was Aaron Donald. He happened to be pretty good at football. So that was kind of a jarring outcome there. Now, I don't know if Mason Graham's going to be Aaron Donald, but I don't know that Bears fans would be very happy if that scenario played out. Still, Mason Graham is a player that I thought probably a week ago would almost certainly be gone before the Bears pick. Now I don't know what's going to happen with him, and that's a huge wild card for me and one of the biggest dominoes in the top 9 that I'm going to be watching very closely tomorrow night.
Yeah, it seems like after Hunter and Abdul Carter, that Will Campbell, Ashton Genty, and Mason Graham are the 3 guys that might have the highest floor, according to draft prognosticators. And I know there's talk about Mason Graham's arms, but it just seems like you're going to get a really good player for a really long time with him. And you think about, if the Bears are able to line Mason Graham up next to Grady Jarrett and rotate Gervon Dexter through there and rotate Andrew Billings through there, like the amount of different things that Dennis Allen can do up front. And I make that same argument if you are in the camp of like, I know we'll get to the Athletics beat writer mock where I took Michael Williams from Georgia. Same kind of idea. I just like, where are you at, Hogue, with the Bears interior line? Because I feel like I always try to give somebody to the Bears and the interior, but you can also sit there and be like, you've got Jarrett, Dexter, and Billings. Maybe Dennis Allen gets more out of Zach Pickens. You have Chris Williams. Don't want to forget him. He had some moments last year, and if he's your number 4, it's pretty good. Like, does defensive tackle then become almost like a quote unquote luxury pick? I'm saying that acknowledging that Mason Graham might be so good, you just take him and you make it work. It doesn't matter. But like I feel like I've gone a lot of different directions with analyzing the interior D line.
Yeah, see, my argument with the defensive line versus offensive line is that it's even more important to have more good players there.
Well, all those guys are going to play in a given game.
Right. Exactly. If you have a good starting 5 on your offensive line, those guys play every snap the entire game. There's no rotation. If you have a rotation on your offensive line, you have a problem.
And that's why the Bears have had rotations for so many years.
Yeah, we've seen them try that in the past. And it just means that you have a big issue. Defensive line, that's how it works. I mean, you rotate guys in and out, you keep them fresh. And so I would have no problem with adding a really good player like Mason Graham, because I think all of a sudden you're talking about it's already an improved situation with Grady Jarrett in the mix. Now it's a really good situation. You start to create those waves of pass rushers and pressure that the Bears have talked about wanting to have. And I think so much emphasis is put on the edge rushers with trying to create that sometimes we forget. And also, as we talked about this last week, what we talked about with the assistant coaches, to me, there's a clear alignment on offense and defense about building these lines inside out, and how interior pressure is just as important as exterior pressure. And one of the things Dennis Allen told me last week was the most important real estate on the field is between the guards, the offensive guards, and the 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So the quickest way to get into that space is through the A gap or through the B gap if you're a 3 technique. So just something to keep in mind if Mason Graham were to fall to the Bears at number 10. I would find it hard to believe that they would pass on him. But the arm length is a question. Let's move to the next big question here. How many quarterbacks in the top 9? We're going to make prediction here on this one. 2 or 3? How many you end up going with?
I think 1. I mean, I was looking at some of the gambling odds. Like Shedeur is just dropping. And, when we did this beat writer mock, it was just like pick after pick after pick, including me, was like, all right, I'm on the clock. Who wants Shedeur? Anybody want to trade up? And it was crickets. Now, those are beat writers. Those aren't GMs desperate for a quarterback who have owners in their ear, who want somebody with, not just the talent of Shedeur Sanders, but everything that comes with him. You think of like the Haslams in Cleveland. You think of different teams that would want that. But man, it sure seems like, and we've had this before, Hogue, where we've had drafts where everyone's like, well, everyone needs, teams are going to trade up for quarterback. It happens. And maybe this is the year. It's like, no, maybe these guys will just get taken where they probably should get taken.
Yeah.
And then Jackson Dart's the wild card, because Jackson Dart, if the Saints, that's kind of the weird one with why I kind of teetered, like, do the Saints go get Jackson Dart? But I'll go with 1.
Yeah, we had we're doing a top 41 mock draft on CHGO today, which we knocked out ahead of time, and I had that Saints pick, and I heavily considered taking Jackson Dart there, and then I decided to pass. And if you pay attention to the information we're getting here before the draft, I mean, I'll go back to Schrager's mock. He doesn't have a quarterback going after Cam Ward, of course, until Shedeur Sanders at 21. Schefter has also pretty much come to the conclusion and reported that he doesn't feel like quarterbacks are going to go. I think the rule is that usually there's a surprise. Usually teams are desperate for quarterbacks. Someone's going to come up and do something crazy. That's usually what the rule is. There are exceptions. We had that draft back in 2022. There's one first-round pick. It was Kenny Pickett. No one else went until the third round, right? Desmond Ridder in the third round. So there are exceptions to that, and I do think that this might be one of those years. So, this gets back to a conversation we've had quite a bit, probably a little bit more on CHGO than this show. But for those who are like, man, I hope Shedeur Sanders falls to 10 so then the Bears can trade back. I kept coming back being like, dude, if he falls to 10, that means there's a problem there. And he's probably going to fall farther than that. So, if somebody was so desperate to come up to 10, I feel like for quarterback, they would go up higher than that. They'd want to leapfrog the Saints or something like that. So it certainly seems like, I don't want to rule anything out, but it sure seems like we're talking one quarterback in the top 9 and one quarterback maybe in the top 20, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because if you look at the teams that would have passed on him, the Browns, the Giants, the Saints, like for them, the Raiders, for all those teams to pass. Oh, no, the Raiders have Geno. For those teams to pass on him, and then the Steelers are 21. Like the Steelers just do not feel like a franchise that's trading from 21 to 10 to take a quarterback. Yeah, so that I think if he gets past those teams, that's why I was interested. Peter Schrager had the Colts train up for Colston Loveland. But I looked this up, Hogue. The last time 2 tight ends went in the top 50, I think I had it down in like you have to go back to like the 1970s.
Did you say 15 or 50?
15.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
It's really rare. I'm sure we'll talk about those guys, but yeah, I'll go with one quarterback in top 9.
All right, I agree. How high would you go up for Ashton Jeanty, Kevin Fishbain? And you're allowed to say not at all. I wouldn't trade up.
Yeah, I would say 9. I think this draft is deep there, and it seems like Ashton Jeanty is special. And I think it'd be phenomenal if the Bears got him at 9. But you can get Amari and Hampton, you can get Travion Henderson, you can get Quinshon Judkins, you can get Caleb Johnson. I just think that there's guys, and if you really want a running back, I just don't know if the gap between Jeanty and those guys is worth that kind of move and what the capital would be to give it up.
Yeah, because it might be next year's first round pick if you're talking about going all the way up to number 5. With like the Jacksonville Jaguars, just for example. Man, I don't think I would go that far. If for some reason the Jaguars and the Raiders both passed, I would be probably willing to go up 2 or 3 spots to secure them if we're not talking about having to give up, a future first round pick. Then I think you start talking about something that would be justifiable for how good Ashton Jeanty could be. But that leads me to the next question, because instead of thinking this as running back in the top 10 or a tight end in the top 10, think of it like game-changing weapon, regardless of the position, that Ben Johnson can use to sort of complete what he's trying to draw up schematically. Another reason why I don't know that I'd go all the way up to like 5 and give up major draft capital for Ashton Jeanty is because we see all these teams get by with average running backs all the time. There might be another offensive weapon there that fits that same type of idea, and that would be Tyler Warren. All of a sudden, and by the way, my Bears mock draft 3.0 came out this morning. I don't think you've seen it yet, Kevin, because I'm not sure it's actually dropped as we're recording this, but by the time people listen to this, it should be up. I did go with Tyler Warren at number 10. I did. But Schrager scoops me because in his mock this morning, he has the New York Jets taking him at number 7. And he said, I'll actually read it. I've been hearing Warren to the Jets for a few weeks. This might seem early for a tight end, but in this draft, teams should just take their guy where they can get him. In Warren's case, the new regime can turn to its owner, fans, and locker room and say, "This is what we are about." I don't know what that actually means, but most importantly, he's been hearing Warren to the Jets for a few weeks. So, do you think that the Jets would draft Tyler Warren in number 7?
Well, as much as we talk about Ben Johnson and the Sam Laporta connection, Aaron Glenn was in Detroit. He saw what Sam Laporta meant. Tyler Warren is probably on a different level than Sam Laporta. So I could see it. I mean, back to your first question about biggest domino, I think Tyler Warren is in that conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he's just such a weapon. I do think there's going to be some recency bias with people seeing what Brock Bowers did. And there's probably teams like, man, we should have taken Brock Bowers if we knew he was going to do that. And unlike a running back, and we've talked about this for months, where if you take Ashton Genty and you don't have a good offensive line, he can only do so much. You don't need to have that when you take a tight end necessarily. Hoge, the last time the Bears took a tight end this high?
Ditka.
The coach. Mike Ditka. And that worked out pretty well. So what I'm trying to say is that if the Bears take Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, whoever one they pick, he will lead the Bears to a Super Bowl in 22 years as the head coach.
I was just about to make that same joke, so good job by you. We're on the same page.
Here's my Colston Loveland Galaxy brain connect the dots. Ready for this? Because in my final Bears mock, before everybody yelled at me for going Kelvin Banks, who I know we'll talk about, I originally had Colston Loveland, and Dane Brugler compares him to Zach Ertz.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Cunningham and Press Taylor were with the Eagles when Zach Ertz was in his prime. So, like, if that is a comp that's other people in Hallis Hall see, just, throwing that out there. What if they're sitting there being like, what if they see the same comp and they saw what it meant for the Eagles? And,
Zach Ertz good enough, though, to justify. I mean, Zach Ertz is good. He's not Travis Kelce.
He's not Travis Kelce, but I was actually surprised when I looked this up, Hoge, here is Zach Ertz 2015 through 2019 receiving yards. 853, 816, 824, 1163, 916.
Yeah.
That's
like more
that
11,
5-year. Though. Yeah. The 2018, 2019, 8 touchdowns back-to-back 2017, 2018. So, but you're right. I mean, that's not, but I would still, when I looked at those stats, they were kind of better than I thought it was going to be. So anyways, that's my Colston Loveland take. I don't know if the Bears are going to take him, but
I'm taking a tight end in the top 10, I want Gronkowski level impact. I want Travis Kelce level impact. I could probably settle for George Kittle impact, but like that's what you got to get. And I like Loveland. Don't get me wrong. I just think Tyler Warren is more of the proven. Like he's literally has he played center? Yes. Has he played fullback? Yes. Has he played in the slot? Yes. Has he played outside? Yes. Has he played quarterback? Yes. He's done it all. He's played running back.
And you keep hearing the Bears people, and you said earlier, talk about playmaker, weapon, like that's Tyler Warren. Yeah. And so
all right, let's make some predictions here. And kind of leading to we'll ultimately make our actual pick. We'll kind of build up to that. If I told you the Bears were taking a left tackle, what would be your pick? Who's your select? And I want this to be not like who you're picking, but like who you think it would actually be for the Chicago Bears, other than Will Campbell. Will Campbell's off the board. Seems. By the way, that's another conclusion I feel like already we've seen in a lot of reputable mock drafts. Seems like he's going to the Patriots, and that's kind of a moot point. So, other than Will Campbell, Bears take a left tackle at number 10. Who is it?
I keep coming back to Kelvin Banks. He was the popular mock pick in the fall and the early winter, and then he kind of dropped off. I know we've got him ranked in the 20s. Darnell Wright was also ranked in the 20s. when the Bears took him at 10. I just think that like there is a lot to like about Kelvin Banks. He might not be none of these guys obviously are Will Campbell, and there seems to be a drop off after Mbao and Campbell, but and I could tell you from my mock 3.0, because that was my pick in my final Bears mock. Bears fans were very unhappy about that, about taking him at 10, which is important to remind everybody that I obviously treat Dane Brugler's beast like the Bible when it comes to the draft. Like, I trust him implicitly. Every team has their own board. Every prognosticator has his own board. If the Bear, like, you will not hear me call anybody a quote unquote reach unless I did the evaluation. I might say per Dane Brugler, it's a reach, but anyway, so yeah, Kelvin Banks would probably be the one I keep coming back to.
So I spent a lot of time before my last mock when I was finalizing it yesterday. Ultimately I debated between Tyler Warren and Kelvin Banks. I went with Warren because I felt like he would be available there, and it just, to me, it feels like he's more of the higher ceiling difference maker that you can't get elsewhere in the draft at that spot. Now that I'm seeing Schrager say, "Oh, Warren might be gone at 7," I'm kind of regretting going that route. But Kelvin Banks would have been my pick, and will be my pick if that's how the draft plays out. And he's sitting there at 10. I like him. Does he need to stay off the ground more? Yes, that's the one concern when I'm watching his film. I don't like that. But other than that, like, he's an all-around really good player. I think he's getting pegged inside to guard a little bit just based on what he looks like, because he kind of looks like a guard. He can look like whatever he looks like. He plays like a left tackle, and his tape's really good across the board. So Josh Connerly, I know Jahns mocked Josh Connerly to the Bears at 10. There's been some smoke there that the Bears like him. I think they like Banks too. And to me, Banks is more of the sure thing. Also, Connerly's interesting because I wouldn't completely rule out the Bears taking him at 10. But if they don't, he might still be available in the second round. Like, he's definitely one of these. There's like 30 players that the consensus is, and I'm not saying mock draft consensus. I'm talking like feedback I've gotten from talking to people around the league. Part of why this whole thing's so unpredictable is there's probably like 30 players that could go anywhere between 15 and 45. And no one really has a good sense of where they're going to go. I would put Connerly in that mix.
Yeah, and that's why you got to be careful with the whole reach steal conversation. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah the other day, and he was talking about Travion Henderson. He wasn't predicting this, but he's like, if the Bears took Travion Henderson at 10, he wouldn't necessarily be shocked. Like, he thinks Travion Henderson's incredible and a great pass protector in addition to his electric abilities. But obviously, a lot of us have thought about Travion Henderson being their pick in round 2, even in round 3. So yeah, you're going to get a lot of that.
All right, edge. If I told you the Bears were taking an edge rusher at number 10, who would it be?
So this was my pick in the beat writer mock draft that just went up at The Athletic today. And I think we're all dealing with the scenario, Hoge, where Warren's gone, Genty's gone, Campbell's gone, Grandma's gone. What do you do? And I went with Mykel Williams out of Georgia. I like that his physical profile fits what we know Dennis Allen has preferred. I like that he's he was productive. He was at Georgia, which has just been a factory for these guys. He's young. And I just like, and this is with any edge rusher, I like the idea that, like, you could draft this guy at 10 and he's just going to give you 50 to 60% of snaps. You don't need him to be, you've got Odengbo. I mean, he could compete and win that job, and Odengbo could be your number 3, but I keep coming back to him as being someone that just makes a lot of sense. He's not going to, you're not going to be throwing a parade, but he's got the physical traits, the production, the pedigree, the fit. I like him there.
Well, this is going to be boring because I'm going to agree with you.
Boring.
But it's because honest. Okay, so here's what I'll say.
Well, who else are you going to? I also think who else are you going to take?
Exactly. So this is why I was going to say it. I don't think the Bears will go edge at 10. But if they do, I'll be shocked if the pick is anybody besides Michael Williams. Just doing my homework on these guys, there's so many red flags on a lot of these edge rushers, including Abdul Carter, by the way. And Michael Williams seems to be the cleanest of the group. He's got the pedigree. He certainly fits the size parameters that we've been talking about a lot with Dennis Allen. He fits the character that the Bears are always looking for. He just seems like a Bear.
You ready for some synergy here, Hogue?
Ooh, synergy.
2018, the Bears have a first-time head coach who's an offensive guy, a top 10 pick. They have a veteran defensive coordinator who has a lot of respect around the league. And what do the Bears do? They take a defensive player out of Georgia, Roquan Smith.
And it worked.
It's kind of like Vic Fangio's pick there. Yeah. Here you go. You got Ben Johnson. You got Dennis Allen. You got top 10 pick.
We won't talk about the other guy from Georgia, though, they took before that, who was actually an edge rusher. Who's still playing, by the way, making good money. Leonard
You know
Floyd.
what? That was not a bad draft. Jonathan Bullard's still playing also.
Yeah, but it wasn't a good one either.
That's true. It was a productive one.
All right, here's a fun one. Who's your pick that would completely shock everyone?
At number 10.
Yeah, but like you could actually see it happening, but it would be shocking. I guess you could say like a crazy trade up, but you can't be trade up for Genty. That's not.
Yeah.
That would be shocking.
No, I mean, I think Colson Loveland would be surprising.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think that because of especially if Warren is still on the board, that would be probably even extra surprising. But yeah, I think Loveland is probably of this little bubble. Remember Ryan Pace called it a cloud. I'm calling it a bubble. The pool of players we keep talking about. Yeah. I feel like if you're looking at, like, if you just look at Dane's rankings and those guys between, Bucket. 4 and 14 Bucket, that Loveland's probably the one we've talked about. He's been mocked the least to the Bears.
That's a good one. I'm going to go with Josh Simmons.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Here's why. First of all, it would be shocking for the Bears to draft another hurt left tackle the second year in a row. However, this is a big if, but it's plausible. Josh Simmons, they've done the medical, and he's passed. And they're like, you know what? We think this guy's going to be ready to go by training camp. And even this morning, Ian Rappaport was, be careful with it a little bit, but, talking about how great Josh Simmons is doing medically right now. Take it with a grain of salt a little bit. I'm not sure squatting 225 in April is necessarily a great thing as it was presented, but let's just say the Bears have done the medicals. They've checked it out, and they're comfortable with it. Because Josh Simmons could end up being the best tackle in this draft. That's not out of the question. There's a lot of people who think that. It's just, and he might have been the first tackle off the board had he not gotten hurt. Now, there's also some character questions there, but again, they visit with him, they work him out, whatever they did, and they're like, you know what? We're comfortable with him. We're comfortable with the knee. We think he's going to end up being the best left tackle in this draft, maybe by next year. Give him I think it'd be unfair to expect him to play 17 games this year at a very high level as a rookie coming off a patellar tendon injury. But I can't rule it out. It would be shocking because that was a lot of ifs I just put in there. We haven't talked about it a lot, but I could see why the Bears would try to justify it at the same time.
Well, I think about him a lot as the trade back option too, if you get into the teens somehow. Here's a question, Hogue. If you draft Josh Simmons, does he have to start week 1? If you take him in round 1? Because part of me is like, wow, what better situation for this guy to not have to start right away?
Right.
You have Braxton Jones, or are you trading Braxton Jones once you make that pick?
Well, I wouldn't want to rush him. But that's why I don't love the idea of drafting somebody with an injury here at left tackle. Because do we know Braxton Jones is going to be ready to go week 1?
No.
I don't. Is he going to be
Well,
100%?
yeah, I don't think people understandably in the building like when we make comparisons to previous regimes and previous players, but you're right. If they take an offensive lineman who's been hurt, it's Chris Williams, it's Gabe Carimi. Well, was Gabe Carimi hurt? No,
No,
he
he
got
wasn't
hurt
hurt, but
later.
he
He
just
wasn't
got
hurt,
hurt.
got hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Williams, it's Tevin Jenkins,
Mhm.
it's Karana Magaji. Am I missing any?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's just, and this isn't just any random knee injury. It's not one that offensive linemen deal with a lot. I don't know. It makes me squirmy. I don't
I like the
think
thought
it.
process though, because
Yeah.
without the injury, again, big if, you can't just take that out, but the tape is going to look really good when they're watching the tape.
Man, that has the possibility though of being like the most criticized pick. Like the one where 3 years down the road you're like, cannot believe they did that. Such a, Bears thing to do. Or he could be a Hall of Famer. So, there's a wide spectrum of outcomes there. All right, before we have fun with our last mock drafts a little bit, we've talked about a lot of possibilities here, a lot of predictions based on what position, feet to the fire. Who do you think is actually the pick? Assuming they stay at 10. Although I guess you could make your prediction that they move around.
Um, I will go with I'll go with Michael Williams
Okay.
or Kelvin Banks. Maybe Tyler Warren. No, I'll go with Williams. He was
All
the
right.
last mock I did, so I'll go with him.
I'm gonna go with Banks.
Yeah. It's a weird spot though, Hogue, right? Because the Bears are in an amazing spot that they have a top 10 pick and they don't have that many glaring needs. Like we've talked, I keep bringing this up on the show. If they had a game tomorrow, you'd feel okay about the roster.
Yeah. That's a good spot to be
So
in.
it's good, but it's not the greatest draft to have number 10. And like if you think that Warren and Graham and Genty and Campbell are gone, you kind of get this place where you're like, and no one's trading up. You're kind of, again, based on the rankings we have, because we know what, no matter what, tomorrow night, Ryan Poles will tell us that the player they got, they were thrilled that he got there. He was the top player on their board. They couldn't believe it. They're so lucky to get him. But it's just it's a unique spot, which is why I really like the idea of the Bears using one of their extra second round picks to trade up into the bottom of the first round.
Okay, wait, before we get there though,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the day the GM gets to the podium after the draft and it's just like, you know what? It didn't go our way tonight. A lot of
We
things
were hope
happen.
Yeah,
We
we were
made a
hoping this guy's
mistake.
gonna get there. He didn't get there. We rushed it.
So
We
we ended up with,
panicked.
this guy. We're
Yeah.
fine with it, but we're
We
gonna
got
lower
swindled.
expectations here a little bit.
We got swindled by a couple teams and agents, so we trade up for Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. Whoops. And yeah. So okay, you managed. I saved this for the end of the show because I don't
Yeah,
want everybody mad at you at the top of the show. We wanted to
that's
retain
fair.
listenership in this one. So why don't you tell everybody what you did in the Athletics last beat writer mock draft, and apologize to Bears fans everywhere.
Yes, so I took Michael Williams, number 10, and then I had some conversation with teams at the end of the first round. And by the way, Hogue, you know how you and I talked about how there's not that big of a gap between players ranked 15 to 40? That's exactly why they should not do what I did. But I fell in love with a player,
Oh
which is
no.
like the worst thing that could happen. He was a GM.
Yeah.
Okay. Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State has been like, I've just circled him as he'd be such a great fit in this offense. He's your slot guy. I mean, he can play anywhere. He's dependable. He's reliable. Like the only knock on him from draft people is like he's just not like that dynamic. Like there's no great trait. You and I watched him a lot in college. I mean, that dude was incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it's a position, it's a premium position, number one. You trade up for premium positions. Who's your slot? Yeah, you could go out with Zacchaeus for week one. I think you're okay. It's not a bad spot to be in, but you could certainly upgrade your wide receiver position. I mean, shoot, Jahns and I have had mocks where we've gone with, whether it's Jalen Noel or somebody else in round two. It's not crazy to think the Bears would take a wide receiver in the second round or third round. So why not take it back to the first? So here's the trade. I sent 39, 72, and a future fifth to the Rams, GM Jordan Rodriguez, for 26 and 124. And I took Ibuka. Because again, if I'm trading up for a guy that I feel really, really good about, and it's at a premium position, and you've got Rome, you've got Ibuka. Look, if you're thinking about adding a tight end to this offense, why not? You think about adding that number 3 receiver who's going to be out there a ton. And you still have 41. So you could pick your offensive tackle at 41 or whomever. You get that 4th round pick as part of the trade. So now you have a 4th. So you don't have this big gap from 41 to 148. So yeah, there you go.
So you
Everybody can now fire me.
Yeah, you moved up from 39 to 26, and you moved back from the 3rd round, 72, back to the 4th round. Is essentially what that trade was. To land your guy. Now, what's interesting about what you did, my last mock draft last year, I had the Bears trade back a few spots. I don't have it in front of me right now, but maybe like to 12, 9 to 12, maybe is what it was. Taking Jared Verse there.
Good player.
And then I did the same thing you did. I traded back into the back part of the 1st round to draft Xavier Worthy.
You did that mock after they had Keenan Allen already, right? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I did. Which is interesting that I did that, but I like Xavier Worthy.
Everyone's yelling at me for a variety of reasons. They say you don't trade up for a number 3 wide receiver. Well, I mean, you kind of took a number 3 wide receiver, number 10 overall last year, number 9, Dunze. So like, why can't you trade up
for 1 year? Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't love it, but you're fired.
I could have taken Connerly. I had this in my mind, and I'm watching the draft, and if Ibuka went, I might have waited a few more picks because I also had a similar trade on the table with the Buffalo Bills, and would have maybe then gone to the Bills spot and taken Connerly. I just think that there's some flexibility there with those 2 second-round picks. If there's somebody that Ryan Poles loves, I think you can move that pick without really hurting your overall draft capital that badly.
So, which brings me to my 2nd round pick in my mock draft, where I took Josh Connerly, who Adam Jahns selected at number 10.
Well, Jahns is an idiot.
And obviously I'm going to be right about that. No, I mean, probably.
Just kidding.
I do think Connerly's one of those guys. There's no chance he's listening to this. You can say whatever you want. Connerly will probably go somewhere in the middle of that range. Who knows? But he's definitely in the category of players. It's like, I don't know. Throw a Jackson dart at the wall and see where he ends up too. I want to end with this thought though. You said a few minutes ago, I think it's an interesting way to think about things. If the Bears lined up, played a game on Sunday, they feel pretty good about the roster. But I want to ask this question. If they literally had to play a game on Sunday, what would be the spot that you're most concerned about?
Sam linebacker.
It's a great answer. Haven't replaced Jack Sanborn.
That's why I took Carson Schweizinger.
UCLA? You took him in the 2nd round?
Yeah.
This mock's all over the place. Wow. Okay.
That was my Bears mock 3.0. Yeah, I did. I did take him in the 2nd because I was like, he's your special teams guy. And then if you don't want to pay Edmonds and Edwards all that money in 2026, He steps in for
enough
Tremaine.
about the linebackers. That's not the answer to the question. The answer to the question is left tackle. Because Karan Amagaji would be playing left tackle if you had a game this Sunday. And I don't know who the backup would even be. So now, obviously, they don't have to play a game this Sunday, but that's that's not bad logic to think about, because on any given moment you lose a player and now you do have to play a game on Sunday and you're like, oh crap, this is what we have. Even if you like Karan Amagaji, and I do think the Bears like Karan Amagaji. Man, it still feels like he's probably a year away from being able to be a consistent full-time starter. Maybe we'll be proven wrong on that. I hope he does prove me wrong on that. But that's a pretty damn important position. That's your blindside protector with your franchise quarterback that you just went out and got this head coach for, that you got these weapons for, that you just upgraded the rest of the offensive line for. Karan Amagaji starting week 1. I just can't get that out of my head here as we go into the draft when I think about which direction the Bears might go. So that's part of why, feet to the fire, my prediction's Kelvin Banks, but I'm not.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. By the way, to go back to your earlier, like, what would be the most surprising? I'm going to throw this at you, cornerback, really quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, I mean, they're all saying nice things about Tyreek Stevenson, but, like, you know, here's the other thing. If, let's say, Tyreek Stevenson starts all year, has a phenomenal year, are they giving him a contract extension after they just paid Jalen and Kyler? Or would they rather somebody on a rookie deal be in that spot moving forward? So just,
I mean, I think it depends on how good he's playing, right?
Yeah, but I do bring that up to note that, like, you could talk yourself into like any position right now.
Yeah,
which is fun.
But yeah, to your point, if you're gonna have, you can kind of go any position. If you're gonna have 3 guys you have to pay, at some point you got to be like, you know what? We're gonna let this guy go, get the comp picks.
Yep.
Draft another one. Those are the situations you want to be in as a winning franchise if you get to that point. You know what? We're not gonna be able to keep Joe Tooney. Let's trade him. We can't pay him. Trade him, get something back, whatever we can get. You know, that happens when you're good and you got a lot of people to pay. So it's a fair point with corner, thinking about it that way. All right. Kevin, thanks for sitting in. Everybody should be listening and breaking in. Can't wait to listen to that Peter King episode. Might get to it on my way home. And otherwise, we will be back on Friday. Jahns will be back Friday morning. We will have an episode. We might even go live. I think we went live last year, kind of like a post-game show situation. So look out for that. We might be live Friday morning. Regardless, we will have a show Friday reacting to whatever happens Thursday night. Then we'll come back when the draft is over at the end of the weekend to recap the whole thing. So make sure you're locked in at Adam Hoge, at K Fishbain, at Adam Jahns, at Hoge and Jahns, all of those accounts. We'll have you covered throughout the weekend. Theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns. Get the beast if you haven't already. Check out Superdog. You can go to Superdog anytime, but you might as well go today if you're hearing this in time. 3 to 9, you can get some athletic swag and also a copy of The Beast while you're there. Kevin, thanks again for filling in. We will be back with you Friday morning. Talk to you then.
See ya.